Hey guys, we are up and early and ready to go this morning. It is chicken processing day. I am working on making breakfast for everybody, and then the husbands are working on getting our station set up. Right now I'm making some eggs, bacon, and sourdough drop biscuits.
Oh look, our friends from Laughing Willow Farms. Our setup this time was significantly better. Here are kill cones. Here is the scalding pods that we dunk the chickens in before bringing them to here. The plucker. This was our setup for gutting and breaking down the chickens. And then we wash them before we put them in the cooler with the salt bath. The salt bath is to keep them sanitized and cleaned, and that was our whole setup. And then before we start our processing day, we always gather around the birds that we'll be processing and say prayer and thank God.
Alright, we are starting on the second batch. The first batch took us about 2 hours from start to finish. We took a break, and now we are getting our setup all over again to do the second batch. Here are chickens. It's a little hot. It's in the afternoon. There they are. We are making sure our water is at temperature so that we can scald them, so it's easier to take the feathers out. So there's our cones, and then our station to break them down. Coolers, we have the kids are filling up the coolers with ice and water and salt. We give them a salt bath to eliminate, to make it more sanitary and clean them out. Yes, there we go. It's been a long day. Hey, so we processed our chickens yesterday. I did not get as much footage as I wanted. I tried to get y'all as much footage as possible to show y'all the whole process and all that, but that didn't happen. I ended up getting sidetracked, started working, just gutting these chickens, and I was really thinking about filming, especially since my hands were dirty and nasty. And then I wanted to show y'all the end, and then a downpour started and we were rushing to clean up as much as we could. Made sure that all the nasty chicken guts and juices and the tables and all that was sanitized. So showing y'all the end did not happen, or the bagging process, but that's life. But we got about 100 chickens processed and bagged yesterday, and overall it was a very successful day. We did about 45-50 chickens. This is all the aftermath. We are putting everything away and cleaning up, mainly just putting everything away. We sanitized most of it yesterday, actually all of it yesterday. So now we just got to clean it up because, like I said, downpour. Sorry, sidetrack. We processed about 35 something chickens and averaged about 2.5 hours for all those. We took about a 2-hour break because we realized we needed more ice and all that halfway through before we started the other chickens. So yeah, I will show y'all some of our bagged chicken and all that. We left them in ice water for 24 hours, and now they are going into the freezer. Alright, I just finished moving all our chickens from the ice bath. This is where they were at. I'm gonna take y'all to go see our freezer. It's pretty packed now. Now I don't know what we're gonna do with that cow that we're supposed to get here soon. Best feeling in the world when you have a freezer full of meat for our family, things that we know what is exactly in it, and also things that we have not bought from the store. So this is great. We have a ton of chickens. They are all pretty evenly sized. Some are very large. We do have a couple little ones. This one's a little tiny one. But we did average about 5 pounds chicken, which is a huge win.
We are going to talk about our third batch of chickens that we processed.
Yes.
The fails and wins to go along with it. Alright, so the first one was 100% my fault. I was doing yard work and I looked at the chicken tractor and the tarp was not all the way secured. And I made the mistake of procrastinating. I was like, oh, I'll get to it later. Well, we ended up having a huge storm that night. Was it night or day?
Night.
It was that night. And I completely forgot about the tarp. And the next day I went to work. And then you remembered that it was storming still, that it was, or sorry, you remember the chickens were out there, and you asked me if I put the tarp on them. And when I got that text, oops.
Yes.
So I completely forgot to put the tarp on the chicken tractor. We lost 10 that day. Luckily it wasn't cold, but we still lost 10 out of our 50 or 60.
And it was a really bad storm. So it was very windy. And it wasn't cold at first, but since the cold front came, it got significantly colder. So that's why we lost so many. They were cold and wet. They can be wet.
They just can't be cold.
They can be cold. And they can be cold, but they can't be wet.
So that one was completely my fault. And going forward, I'm going to try and just be better and not procrastinate.
We want to do
A fixed
shelter from the rain, because once we do them in the springtime, we do get a good amount of rain. Well, we get a lot of storms that come through. So having a permanent shelter would be good.
Yeah.
Like something a little bit stronger than tarp, but not too strong that would make the...
It won't be permanent, but a much beefier setup. Because right now it's just a couple 2x4s, some cattle panels, and chicken wire, and a tarp. So obviously if it gets cold, they get cold, but we want to try and figure something out. Moving on. We did underfeed them once again. We seem to always have a hard time gauging how much feed to give them. But
so in the beginning, about the first 2-3 weeks, we think we underfed them a little bit, and we also had so many and they were too little to put them in the tractor outside at this time, that there was too many in the thing, and the
big plastic watering trough that they were in for a little bit, and it just wasn't enough room. This is the most chickens we've ever done, so that was one thing that we didn't accommodate for.
But then you did this thing in the shop where it was...
Oh yeah, some friends of ours, they ended up putting some 6 mil tarp or 6 mil plastic down, and they put it in their shop, and they just put grass and dirt and stuff like that, made a much bigger setup until they were able to go outside. So he had that idea. It was a really good idea. I think all of the people that we knew that were doing chickens kind of implemented that, just because I think we all upgraded to, or we increased our number of how many chickens we were doing. So we ended up taking that and running with it. So that ended up helping out a lot.
Yes. So that worked out really well. And we'll do that again.
As long as you put enough plastic down, and I would recommend doing 2 layers of 6 mil. Put that down and put enough bedding or whatever you're going to put in there. But again, with the whole theme of we got more than we ever have, we had too many for the tractor we put them in.
The outside tractor. So technically it wasn't, basing it off the square footage that meat birds need, it wasn't too many. But we've noticed that the tractor that had...
For the size we were trying to get them to.
Yes, okay.
That's whether it was too small. Like we would have just kept them at a humble pounds, then they probably would have been fine. But once we started picking up the feed and giving them more feed, giving them more food, they began to get a lot bigger, and they would start to, because they were so close, they generate a lot of heat. They're just sitting in there generating heat, getting fat, and then that doesn't really set you up for success, because then they start splitting at the thigh. their skin will start to split. And then once some of the skin splits, then you have the other hens that are a little bit more dominant. They'll come in and they'll try and peck because they see that as a weakness, and they'll try and kill some of the other chickens. So eventually we had asked around, and we had some friends of ours that talked to somebody else, and they said, yeah, it could just be that they were splitting because they're being overfed, or because they are
Too crowded.
too crowded and they're just on top of each other. So we ended up splitting them into another tractor, and then once we did that, they just...
Yes, they started to thrive. And then we'll move on to our fail in the when we were actually processing. We did not have enough ice or coolers, so that went with us increasing in number and also getting better at doing this. Our birds were significantly bigger, so they went through a lot more ice and a lot more room. They took up more room in the coolers, which we didn't account for because we didn't think they were gonna get this much bigger. Yes. Do we have more chickens? Okay, we did.
Well,
we started out with more. We ended up with 43 chickens.
which was more than what we had last time. 10 more is a lot.
Yes, and
if
they're
I lay
big.
10 chickens right here, that'd be a pretty good amount.
Yes.
But those were the major fails, and granted the first two were not part of the meat processing aspect of it, but it did kind of feed into this whole experience of processing your own chickens and raising them. But we did have some wins. A good flow going, so that's one thing that is crucial. Figure out how you want to set up your process and stick to it. Now, if you have to change things for the better, that's fine. And as you go through this, you'll find those things that work for you. But find a good flow and stick with it. But yeah, we had 6 kill cones, 3 burners going. So we had 2 that were always in use, 1 that was always heating up with clean water. So whenever one pot got super nasty, we could dump that one, bring in the other one, start using that one, and just have it on a little rotation. Because the last time we did this, the bottleneck was the scalding.
Yes.
So we had that, plenty of knives, plenty of cutting boards for everyone to use, and depending on where you're located, if the heat is a pain in the butt, then you want to try and find some place with shade, and that's what we were able to do on this one, and it made it a hell of a lot easier because we weren't dying. We just made sure to stay hydrated, and the trees were really good to us. Everybody was comfortable for the most part.
Another win is where this processing time, all the kids were involved the whole time, which was awesome. Is they all were constantly involved and they were excited, and it was really nice having them help because they were a huge help. And then it's also part of what we want to teach our kids. We want to show them where our food comes from, why we do this, all that. So it's really nice having them all in too, not because we're like, hey, you need to be here, but because they actually want to be there and helping. Yeah. So that was awesome.
And watching them take ownership of their station was really cool.
Yes. Another thing we did differently this time is we had a babysitter for the little ones. The little ones are almost 3 and then almost 2. So it was really helpful because if not, then either I or Keisha had to stay inside watching the babies. So having our babysitter was amazing, and she was great. So definitely gonna do that next time as well. And then these were our biggest birds. They averaged about 5.5 pounds each, and that was actually our smallest bird this time. I don't even think was the size of our biggest bird.
The first or the second time. Yes.
So they grew quickly, and I think what helped us, they could have been bigger if we didn't have those issues in the beginning. But what really helped us was making sure that they had food there at all times. Last time we would take their food out in the evening because we were scared that they would die from heart attacks. But with the feed that we're giving them, which is soy-free, non-GMO, corn-free.
I don't know all the other specific things.
So they don't gonna get to the size of passing out and having heart attacks in just 8 weeks. And this we learned from another family. Actually, Keisha told us that one of her friends that has done this for a while told them that it's really not an issue. So we left the feed there day, night, everything, and they had access all the time. So I think that really contributed to our 5.5 pound birds, which was nice.
Yeah, they were pretty big.
Yes. Next time, we're hoping for 7.5, 8 pounds.
Because Keisha's were...
She had huge birds, but she didn't fail. She didn't have to like underfeed them and all that. So yeah, that's our fails and wins for this batch. We also have a podcast episode where we talk about our fails and wins from the last 2 times that we did it. So I will link that below. And then
So things we're going to do differently next time is we're going to have certain maximums we're going to have for each tractor, and I have to build some more. But I think if we do 15 to 25 each tractor instead of doing 50 in one, that'll definitely help out. And we won't have to move them as much because with 15 to 20 chickens, especially when they're younger, they're not going to destroy the grass as much, so we can leave them and not have to move them as much.
I still have to do once a day.
Maybe once every other day.
In the beginning,
as they get bigger. But so we're gonna have more tractors, less birds in each one, a better feeding system because, like we talked about on one of the podcasts, is a linear trough definitely helps because then you don't have any major differences between your biggest and your smallest birds. And I did do one linear trough, but this time I'm actually gonna put some more effort into it and make it beforehand, so that way we're prepared.
Yeah, I think the linear trough really worked. It was nice.
And then, yeah, I think that, and just making sure we have enough feed.
Yes, because that was another thing. We did end up running out of our feed about 2-3 weeks before we were processing, and it was too late to order it because they have to and all that. So we actually ended up feeding our birds layer feed with a ton of like liver scraps that we had at the house, just anything that was left over dinner or anything, we just gave it to the birds. So I think that also contributed to having smaller birds, 5.5 pounds. But it's also amazing that we were able to give them layer feed and just scraps that would normally go in the trash or in the compost or to our laying hens.
Yeah, the laying hens were not happy.
Yes, because
they were not getting any of the good stuff. But yeah, that's what we're gonna do next time. Those are some of our fails.
Another thing was our packaging system. We tried it out the last time, and this time we did the shrink wrap, and that is awesome.
Yeah, definitely helps.
Yes, those bags are amazing. Do not try whole bird in a
vacuum seal.
Vacuum seal will not seal, but I will link those bags below as well.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. So yeah, hopefully the next time we have 0 fails and
7.5
gigantic monster birds.
Turkey chickens.
So
let us know what you have done in the past. If you have processed chickens, if you've grown them, just let us know what you do. All right.
Bye.
Bye.